We are live on YouTube for the Thursday edition of the Not Your Average Investor Show, the JWB Radio. I am your solo host today. It is a special occasion because Madison and Greg are off to a special edition of the founders of JWB are hosting like an Ask Me Anything, and it got pushed off till today. So it is me and our guest investor today, who I'm super pumped to meet, community member whose name I have butchered 1,000 times, but I think I got it right now. Yeah. He's a physician out of Maryland. Him and his wife are both physicians, 2 young kids, and now they are real estate investors. Yves Richard Dole, welcome to the show, my friend.
Yves without the S.
Yves, God, see, I keep butchering. All right, by the end of the show, I will get it correct. Yves Richard Dole, man, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. You know, it's a privilege, exciting. I told you like before, it feels like I'm watching a celebrity.
Well, we're about to make you a celebrity. I want to welcome the community. I want to welcome anybody that's watching on YouTube, anybody that's listening on the podcast later on down the line here. You know, we only say that you can enjoy the free content stream all you want, but the moment you want to get down with us, the moment that you want to come in and be a part of the community, go to NYAIS.com, register there, join us on one of our Tuesday or Thursday live shows so you can be part of our favorite tradition. Yves, you know what I'm talking about?
Roll call?
The roll call, baby. Let's go. We got John Henning.
First day of spring, right? First day of spring.
It's the first roll call of spring out here. Yeah, let's go. We got John Henning, our leadoff matter, kicking us off. We got Big Papa J. Cohen saying hello from chilly Las Vegas. All right, Jay, I like that. We got Keitha Janella from rainy Southern California. Keith is a friend of ours that we got to meet at the meetup recently. We got Aaron O'Neill into the lights. Aaron, good to have you in here. We got Chris Gonzaga from the illustrious Hudson Valley of New York. You ever been up that way? You're from New York, right?
Yeah, we got family out there.
Is it as illustrious as it sounds?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Especially in the fall, all the leaves.
All right, cool.
We got homesick now.
Yeah, all right, cool. Yeah, we got Joe Bussey out here. Joe, I think I've seen you. I think we've had Joe before. Now, welcome to the show for the first time from Wine Country. Sounds good. We got Gerard Wendling saying hello, all. Good to have you. We got Hervé Francois saying what up, fam? A fellow Haitian, right? Hervé is also from Haiti. Drew Barnhill, the ringmaster of the Not Your Average Investor Show community, saying good day, all. We got Jillian Noel is back. Jillian, good to have you. We got the karaoke witness, Deborah Schwartz, saying good morning. You know the story behind that, Yves?
No.
So we had to meet up here locally, and I convinced a whole bunch of people that they had to go out late night to watch me sing karaoke because I do this like insane rendition of Total Eclipse of the Heart. But it was a super tiring day, and everybody just kept dropping like flies, and we ended up with only like 5 people out, and Deborah was made it out, man. But she saw it. She said it was worth it. We got Leo. We're rocking on. Leo from the Bay Area. You're a rock star, man. We got the first family of the Not Your Average Investor Show community, Ken and Carolyn Moline in the house. We salute you. We got Eddie Harris from Atlanta. We got Sergio Prieto, Go Gator. Sergio and I were texting over Facebook not that long ago. Past star of the show, Misty Johnson in the house from Denver. We got Greg number 1. The only Greg with us today is Greg Stone. Howdy from New Jersey. We got Gary and Rosalind Riley from rainy Marietta, California, the second family of the Not Your Average Investor Show community. Good to have you. And Terry Ingram, howdy from Orlando. Terry, I think that's a new name. Welcome to the community, my friend. You're in for a special experience as we dive into the story of Yves. Yves, what's your story, man? How'd you get started in real estate?
Definitely. My wife and I, we were raised in New York. Our family heritage is from Haiti. We were both born there and emigrated as young kids. And we chose the medical field, and we settled in on living in Maryland after my wife did her training there. And, we were working, and we realized that the cost of living was going up. We needed to save for a lot of things. And we calculated, what our salaries were, which we were privileged, to be, having a good income. But the amount that we needed for future savings and the cost of education, things like elder care, it just wasn't adding up. We needed, we knew that we could only work a certain number of hours before getting burnt out or not having enough time for kids. So we knew we needed to have a separate stream of income, because if something happened to one of us, where we wouldn't be able to work, what would we do? So real estate became the ideal vehicle for that. So we did a lot of reading.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just talking about that, man. I want to dive into a couple of things there, right? Like one is this, you said burnout, right? Like I was intimating with you before the show that I have this like client that's a financial advisor for a physician,
Mhm.
been getting, tuned into the financial life of doctors, and burnout is this like huge subject in your
Yeah,
field, isn't it?
yeah, definitely in medicine, but I'm sure it's not unique to medicine. Basically, it just means where, you're working hard, you're making a certain amount of money, but there's so many systemic issues within the system that don't allow you to do the things that you want to do, or cause you to have to bring the work home, where now work starts to infiltrate into your family life. And it's just not sustainable, so people don't realize sometimes that they're burnt out until the last minute when they're like, I just can't do this anymore. And we didn't want that to happen to us.
Yeah. Yeah, man, that makes perfect sense. And it sucks that it's happening in, it's so endemic to the profession that we all count on so much, which are
Right.
our physicians that we count on to keep us healthy. And you got to be healthy for us to be healthy. The other thing that I think would be interesting to talk about is this idea that I think there is a fallacy out there that people think, man, you're a doctor. Why do you even need to invest in real estate? Like
Mm.
you're like these high income earners, but you said it yourself. You're dependent on like doing these procedures, and you almost mentioned it as like as risk mitigation, right? Like you're trying to start a second stream of income because you want to hedge for the idea that if at some point you can't be working, or you want to I guess what is your why, right? I don't want to speak for you, but you kind of mentioned risk mitigation in there, which I thought was really, really interesting for your profession.
Correct. Yeah, our parents were fortunate enough to have done well after immigrating from Haiti, but still, they weren't entrepreneurs, and don't have a whole lot of savings. So, watching them worry about how they're going to pay for certain things, especially in retirement, got us thinking and became part of our why. We have two kids who are both 7 and 9, and there's a website where you can type in the future year and find out how much education is going to cost at that point. And then we looked at each other and we're like, this is ridiculous. So we realized that, real estate was one way that we can try to, hedge for our future. The stock market, we were interested in participating in, but it can be a little complex, especially when, you're still busy keeping up with all the new advancements, in the medical field, so it's hard to keep up with all of that. But real estate felt very tangible and something that we could try to do on our off time whenever that came.
Yeah, which I'm sure is takes some planning for
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
for two physicians with
Yeah.
kids. And then you said you started doing some reading, right? Like where did you start? Did you start like everybody else with Rich Dad Poor Dad? Did a friend give you kind of like a tip on how you got started?
Yeah, Rich Dad Poor Dad is definitely one of those books that, somehow is circulating around as the first book that people get, to try to, stimulate their appetite on real estate. We went to a Fortune Builders seminar locally in the city of Baltimore, where we met some very charismatic individuals who were able to explain to us how real estate worked. And we also met a lot of people in the audience that were local that we stayed in touch with, and were actually able to see how they were able to use real estate for themselves, to increase wealth building.
Yeah, man, a lot of such a likely story inside of our community, right? Like the fortune builder's path to finding
Yeah.
JWB, the idea that, fortune builders are not fortune builders, the idea of being surrounded by other people that can give you context of,
Mhm.
how it's working for them, right? Like we're super grateful for like to like the Lees and the Jens of the world and the Andrew Barnhills of the world that like will give people their number and be like,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 come talk to me about this thing, right? It's
Yeah,
that
and then you mentioned earlier about, starting off as a physician in the Y, and one of the things that we were calculating is how much money we owed. Coming from college to medical school, yes, there is a good salary to be had in medicine, but the amount of years it takes to catch up sometimes prevents, wealth building for a lot of physicians. Sometimes it could be very difficult. And so when we calculated how much money we owed collectively, I'm not going to give the exact number, but, it was in the six figures, high six figures. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a small fortune to pay for medical. I
Yeah.
wonder, I want to get into the property, but
Yeah.
would you call that, we talk a lot about smart debt on the show.
Mhm.
Would you consider medical school and higher education loans smart debt? I mean, I guess it does set you up for a high income earning career.
Correct.
I wonder how you think of that debt.
I think, when it comes to education, I think that if somebody has a passion for something, then I would go for it.
Yeah.
How to pay for it. There's definitely, and now you have YouTube, plenty of education. Back then, when I remember when I was in college, the internet was just starting. You had to actually go to the library or have a financial consultant that was pretty knowledgeable about how things worked. But if you're passionate about something, I would go for it.
Yeah.
Worried about how to pay for it later, because
Yeah.
we live in a country where there are plenty of scholarships. I remember one summer I worked at Home Depot and they had a scholarship. And I was like, how does Home Depot relate to medical school? And they said, they gave me the pamphlet, and lo and behold, there was a clause where, they felt that, all homeowners, should learn how homes work and things of that nature. So they value teaching people and gave you $5,000 towards your education.
Smart.
So a lot of opportunities to get by when pursuing your passion.
That's awesome. That's a good insight to know, man. It's an interesting conversation.
Mhm.
All right. Right now, we're at the time where we are going to test that knowledge of the stuff that you've been studying up on. We're going to put up the property of the week. You are our guest investor. You know what I haven't done? I'm gonna be honest. I have not looked to see what GC's notes were on what he loves
Yeah.
about the property. So I'm gonna be doing this on the fly. But we are gonna magically whisk ourselves away here to this 7477 Proxima Road, Jacksonville, Florida 32210. Got a purchase price of $230,000, monthly rent of $1,531, 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 1,528 square foot. Finished construction status. It's been remodeled here. It's got an average duration stay of 4.5 years. Annual appreciation here in Jacksonville, which is the best in class cash flowing market of 4.6%. Still has that buyer credit available for anybody that's getting in here before the end of March. I think if you do, you got to get it quick. But this is what we love talking about here on the Not Your Average Investor Show. This IRR of 13.03%. Eve, as an investor yourself, when you're looking at properties, when you're looking at this deal right now, what's the first thing that you normally like to look at here?
Definitely the purchase price and the monthly rent.
Tell me more.
And everybody purchases properties different. Some people purchase it with cash or conventional financing. We are more in the conventional financing, bracket. So we'd want to make sure that, the monthly rent covers, the mortgage. And hopefully there's some cash flow left over to put back towards the property.
Yeah, there you go. Tell me more about that, right? So if you are a conventional financing person, when you're thinking about it, like conventional financing versus cash, what are you thinking about it? Why is it that you're leaning into doing it with conventional financing?
Because we are late income earners. We don't really have a lot of savings built up necessarily for investing. So, but we do have borrowing capability based on our credit. So that's the avenue that we choose.
Yeah, that makes sense. We've mentioned that a couple of times here, right? Like as physicians, you're very lendable, right? Like people love loaning you money because they think you're not a high risk of not paying it back, right? Because you got these magical abilities. So you're taking basically the debt that you can get as a doctor because of the income that you're earning, you're putting it into these properties. You were talking about this idea that you want to, kind of like hedge against like losing a job or something like that. You want to be able to pay for college later. Tell me how you think about like the cash flow that you are looking for when you're looking for one of these deals versus the investment as a whole.
Sure. The investment as a whole, for real estate, we hope to appreciate over time. So we're trying to play the long game. And we know that as long as we can have the place occupied and have the tenant pay down the mortgage, in time, we'll be in good shape.
Yeah, got it. Got it. So you're not looking for cash flow today as much as cash flow tomorrow and net worth tomorrow, right? Like
Correct.
kind of like what we like to talk about. What is your, what, do you remember the purchase price of your home? Like, right, you bought your, all right. So let's tell everybody the backstory, right? You were one of the, you were one of the last folks that bought new construction before JWB put in this provision of they're not selling new construction until it's already ready to go. And I think that you were one of these like outliers that is kind of like the reason why they did that, right? You want to tell the story of kind of what your purchase has been like?
Sure. We did our research on turnkey property management companies, and JWB came, well recommended. So we had a few Zoom sessions with some of the members, and we selected on the current property, that we're interested in, and we put our deposit down once we realized, this particular property was a good fit. Aside from it being a new construction, and which we anticipated would be just a few months. So we put our deposit down, and what was a few months turned out to be 2.5 years based on some of the permit issues that were encountered during the building phase. So, we would get an email every quarter saying that the construction date got pushed back. So we were kind of frustrated by that. But what surprised us was that JWB had, to not increase the initial purchase price. So essentially, they were taking on all the costs of the delayed construction. So allowing us to, maintain or have increased equity in the home over time. So once that happened, we were like, wow, this is a great company to work with.
Yeah. So I want to just go back and say 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, it was 2 Christmases went by, still no property. We had the money saved for the down payment on the mortgage, and yeah, it hadn't happened to the point where we were gonna consider just spending that money on something else at this point because of inflation and things of that nature. So, but eventually we got pictures showing the steady progress of the construction. So, the excitement built up again.
That's cool. That's cool. So 2 years, kind of like not an optimal experience to say the least, right?
Sure.
Kind of like being ready to go and wanting your thing going. But then on the other side, I guess the benefit is you paid for this home the price that it was 2 years ago. And we all know that real estate over the last 2 years has done very, very well. So you're walking into this thing with a whole bunch of equity already. And I imagine that feels pretty good. I mean, how do you think about that versus the fact that you're also going to have a higher mortgage and stuff like that, right? Like, how do you feel about that, kind of like that whole equation?
When we first started the process, we started with our why and made a long-term plan based on the goals that we wanted to accomplish in the future. And part of the plan was to acquire a certain number of property, let's say per year. And so, we didn't want to be in a situation where, as soon as we decided on the second property while waiting for the first, the first became available. And then next, we're juggling 3 mortgages, so we didn't know when the property was going to come online, because every time we called, the construction date only got pushed back by like a couple of months. So every couple of months we thought that this was going to be it, but it wasn't. So, but now that, we're in a situation where at least, having waited and having a company that's able to honor the original price allows us to be in the position where we feel like, we didn't lose much.
That's pretty good, man. That's good to hear. And you've stayed busy though on the real estate front, right? Like this is this is one house that you're acquiring. You were just telling me that you're also doing some short-term rental stuff. Tell me about the short-term rental stuff you're doing.
Yeah, sure. Once we caught the real estate bug, that was it. We started just reading a lot. Our commutes along, so we've got some audio books, on the rotation. So we definitely picked on diversifying by getting a short-term rental property, which is a whole unique field by itself. And so we first looked locally, and big cities don't really lend to the short-term rental market. So we were like, that sucks. And so we ran into another book that touted how to manage your rental property without a property management company to maximize return. So we were like, all right, we're interested. And so we settled in Florida, in the Orlando Disney market, believe it or not. So that's where we are now, just riding that journey.
And it's so interesting, man. It's so interesting to me that you would go from, I guess in my head, JWB is like the quintessential passive investment to then short-term rental, manage it your own.
Well, yeah, we're a little bipolar in that respect. But no, the ability to be remote and manage something is quite interesting based on all the technology that's available. And, it maximizes, the profit, because a lot of the property management companies, they deserve it, but they do charge anywhere from 10 to 20% off the top. So we were definitely interested. So, that's something that we haven't gone live yet, because the Disney market is obviously for kids, and the house just can't look like any regular house. So the kids want it to be an extension of Disney. So, I mean, it's looking pretty cool. We have some rooms that are decked out in Black Panther stuff, and the garage, they don't use garages when you're on vacation. So we turned the whole garage into a Star Wars themed game room. And, we've got some Finding Nemo bedrooms. So, because you have to compete with the houses that are in that area, so otherwise, you're going to lose out and have to sell, which unfortunately has happened to some people.
It feels kind of like you were just closing on the long-term rental here with JWB. You're just kind of like, you're remodeling that Disney house. Are you kind of preparing for, and you kind of have like one foot in passive and not passive to a certain extent, right? Like,
Sure.
Talk to me about the mentality of like preparing for that. You're a physician, your wife's a physician, you got young kids. How are you handling all that stuff?
It's definitely not easy. We try to make it a family endeavor, get the kids involved. So, one day all four of us just flew down there. The kids thought we were going to Disney. We were like, no, this is a business trip. And, so we tried to get them involved in picking out the furniture and all that kind of stuff. But, it really comes down to delegating tasks and dividing and conquering. I think that once, we have a schedule in place for the week, we try to implement it and touch base midweek to see how everybody's doing. But then there are days where we just come home and pass out, but when it comes to the short-term rental, there's a lot of automation involved, so that makes it tremendously beneficial in terms of our lifestyle. We don't plan on having, we're not one of those people that are going to have like 150 doors for short-term rental. I think for now, one is enough. Just to see how the system works, because I know it's something that's quite popular right now that a lot of people want to get into. So we figured, that there's a lot to learn. So, let's figure it out.
It should be interesting, man. I'm very interested to see how the short-term rental market weathers this like white collar recession thing that we got going on.
Yeah.
Are you talk to me about like the financial strategy? Are you thinking that you're going to use the extra cash flow from the short-term rental to pay down one or the other mortgage more aggressively, things like that? Are you already thinking down
Definitely,
that line?
yeah. Everything is going to be reinvested, ideally to pay down any mortgage or debt, before we do anything with it. So whether it be the mortgage from the short-term rental or the long-term rental, and once we have that equity, then we can use it for things like college funding, all those future expenses, which I know are coming.
Yeah. So what you're saying is basically like we just did a show on this on Tuesday, these like financial engineer levers.
Yeah.
And once you pay down the debt completely, then your cash flow goes way up. And now it's real lifestyle money that you're going to be able to use it. What's your plan for acquiring more properties? Are kind of what kind of pace are you on? What are you thinking about as far as that goes?
To be honest, the dream is commercial. You know,
Okay.
I'd rather fix one roof than than several roofs.
Okay.
So eventually, we'd like to get maybe a small, apartment building or something of that nature, to try to manage. But right now, the goal is to, number one, close on the long-term rental property with JWB, which is happening next month. And because now that construction is complete, and then focus on this short-term rental. And I think we'll take a breather from there.
Yeah. Talk about that. When you're saying that the dream is commercial,
Mhm.
why is that?
I think that with the combination of learning about having a long-term tenant, while also we've been learning about how to keep guests happy from the short-term rental perspective. I think that if we combine the two into, let's say, a small apartment building, I think we would have gained the knowledge in terms of, how to keep the tenant happy at the same time as providing a comfortable living experience for the folks that are renting.
Got it. And I guess you're kind of answering it in how you said it. Because my next question was, why the dream? Why not? If the dream is commercial, why not start with commercial?
To be honest with you, I did start with commercial.
Okay.
I guess my wife's dream was the short-term rental. So she kind of pulled me along. So once I figured out that, there's a way to do short-term rental without a property management company, I was willing to listen. She was supposed to be on the show today, but she got called into work. And so, I told her I do this with her. And then so it's been a fun ride.
Interesting. That's interesting. When you say that you were like looking into like commercial deals.
Yeah, there were some opportunities in the area. One of the things that I realized in the real estate is that there's just a wealth of information. I mean, every day there's a guru popping up on YouTube. There are books popping out, and you can spend the entire time just reading
Yeah.
or watching videos and consuming content. But at some point, you got to get out there and meet people and figure out how they do deals and find out how that works. So, we joined the real estate association, community in our area and found people who were doing it. And, we were like, all right, well, can I shadow you and figure out how this works? Kind of like how medicine works, where, you shadow a senior doc until you kind of learn the ropes on your own. And then, you go out on your own. So I feel like at some point we had to stop and put the books down and, turn off the YouTube and actually get out there.
Eve, I gotta be honest with you, man. I thought when we were gonna hop on this thing, I was like, all right, two doctors, you got young kids. We're gonna be talking about like all passive. And and this has turned into like, how are you doing this, man? Like,
Yeah.
how do you find the energy? Like, so you're talking about managing managing the property in Orlando. You're now like out there networking in Baltimore and looking for like commercial deals and
Mhm.
things like that. How does that fit into the idea of not burning out and having lifestyle and stuff like that? Are you trying to just get as far ahead of it as you can right now while you got some energy, or
No,
what's your mentality around all that?
there is a give and take. I was fortunate enough to be at the current place that I'm at for some time. So at some point, the time came for me to pull the trigger. So I work a certain schedule, and most of the time I have Thursdays and Fridays off.
Got it.
So the bulk of the schedule is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then, Thursday, Friday, I'm good to learn about real estate. And
Now,
then, my
okay.
wife did the same thing where, she talked to her employer and said, are there days that I can work from home? And they worked it out. And, so her schedule is lighter at the beginning of the week where she works from home. So, there had to be some give and take. We just couldn't be, go, 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 and real estate and raising the kids. That'd be, yeah, I know. So now that you mention it, yeah, it does sound crazy the way I talked
Crazy.
about it in the beginning.
Yeah, man. I guess you remind me a lot of my buddy. I got a buddy here, Tim Horvath, he's in anesthesia and he
Yeah,
goes 24 hours, right? So like he'll have like 1 day on and then 2 days off, and he's
yeah,
building a nice little commercial real estate empire down here in Jacksonville
yeah,
during his days off. So I guess in those types of shifts, then you can really fit it in, and I
yeah.
have to assume you're also very efficient with your time.
Try to be. I gotta fit the gym in there somewhere.
I mean, for sure, you got to keep it tight, man. You got to keep it tight. Have
Yeah.
you? Weird question, but have you met up with Lee Bish? Like, like Lee's in Baltimore, right? Has he reached out to you? Have y'all connected over there?
No, no, no. And like I said, we're putting the books down.
Okay.
I signed up to be with you guys. At this point, there's value in just. I've learned so much just actually jumping into the short-term real estate game just by actually just pulling the trigger. I could tell you more about HVACs now than than I could last year. Just
Yeah.
because one of them broke down.
Yeah. I heard a great quote. I think it was on like I was listening to like a Tim Ferriss podcast. It was something like, and he was interviewing this like legendary venture capitalist guy, and they said something along the lines of like, knowledge comes from reading, wisdom comes from doing, right? Or something like
Yeah.
that, right? So
Oh
like you're
man, it's so true. It's so true. I mean, we definitely, keep on reading. There are a lot of books that we consider our favorite, but yeah, no, just talking to people and learning from their experiences has been quite valuable as well.
what are good resources? What are good resources on the learning side of it, right? Like you said, good books and YouTube channels
Yeah,
and stuff
yeah.
like that. What are you out there? What are you out there listening on podcasts or watching on YouTube or reading? Tell me some. Give the people some tips.
Sure, sure. Well, in terms of the short-term real estate, there's the Short-Term Shop by Avery Carl. She's the one who's kind of mastered how to do this without property manager. They have 150 to 200 doors themselves, and they come from humble beginnings and, tout that it's quite doable. So I love, consuming, their content. So, and then when it comes to just real estate in general, there's just so many, watching you guys twice a week. Gregg is the technical one. So I'm always, interested to see, his take on the market.
Yeah, I'm more interested in what he says too. For the record.
Because I try to read that stuff myself, but it's too dense. I
Yeah.
need someone to break it down for me.
In this show, man, what do you find particularly helpful so that we can do more of that stuff?
I think, when the two of you are together, if you weren't there, I think Gregg would just go technical all the way.
I gotta
think,
dumb it down for the
every
people.
5 minutes you bring him back and like, and you summarize it sounds like you get all out of it, a lot out of it as well, because if you can summarize something, that means you know it.
Yeah.
So, but the way you summarize it, the rest of the folks can understand.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you. And yeah, we were talking before the show about this, right? Like I feel very, very fortunate to have had this forcing mechanism of every Tuesday and Thursday being here, sitting next to GC and getting to talk to people like
Yeah,
you and the rest of the
yeah,
community. It's been a big one for me, man. Like just I learn through people, right? Like I guess kind of like everything that you're saying, right? Like I learn a lot. Audio changed my life, right?
yeah,
Podcasts and audiobooks changed my life completely when I discovered them in like 2014-ish, I would say, kind of
mhm,
like when Serial came out. I
yeah,
listened to
yeah.
that. And then I started just pouring into like Neil deGrasse Tyson's podcast. And, like I started just learning about everything. And finally I realized that I could learn about business and investing
Yeah.
and these types of things on it,
Yeah,
man. It's been
because
it's been
whether
big.
you're commuting or at home, people want interesting content to listen to, and then you're in the podcast space, and so you provide it for us. So I think that's great.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate that.
Mhm.
What about subjects wise? Like on this show, how did you find this show? Did you become a client, or like did Fortune Builders refer you this way, and then you started tuning into this because of
No,
it?
once I was plugged in with JWD, they recommended the content from the
Yeah.
website, and then I've been watching ever since.
Cool. Good job, team.
Yeah.
Chris Gonzaga, your boy from the illustrious Hudson Valley, has he says something here. Good short-term property managers are hard to come by. They're on their fourth in 3 years. Is that why you were
Oh
so
wow.
keen? Yeah, is that why you were so keen on doing it yourself when you were doing short-term, or was it something else?
you know, we realized that if we're going to learn and put in the work, we wanted to reap the benefits. One of the things that the property management companies do is the websites that host these homes are very driven on reviews, and they keep the property under their name. So if you fire them, then you have to start from scratch in building the base and the algorithms to keep your property, high on the search list. So, we felt that, if we're doing the work and, it's manageable, then we wanted to reap those benefits too, because these property management companies, they charge a hefty percentage off the top.
Did I hear correctly then? If you list with them, now the reviews and all that stuff stays with them. So if you leave them, you'd have to kind of like start over from zero. It's almost like you'd have
At least for the ones that we were in touch with.
Interesting. That is definitely a risk, right? Like that is definitely
so
one way
they
to
have
think.
everything on their site or on their page. So if you start on your own, then you'll be at the bottom of the algorithm.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's almost like if you were to start your own, I don't know, Twitter account or Instagram account, but somebody else owns it. You can't leave them because then you got to start over again. And
then there are the tax benefits. We purchased the home, and the home is considered a business, which depreciates, which allows you to offset any W-2 income.
Oh, okay.
Which is specific to short-term rentals and real estate.
Interesting. So as physicians, because you have that high income W-2,
correct,
having that business on the other side that doesn't. How is that different from long term? So long term, I know that the tax benefits in long term it's depreciation, right? Like depreciation of the cost of the materials in the home, kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't apply to your W-2. That applies to the income that you make
Correct.
from long term, from your rental.
From what I'm told, again, this is a topic that I'm still learning, but from the short term market, I think that there's a little more leeway in that.
Got it. That makes sense, man. All right. You said you had your property address, man. I want to pop this thing into Google Maps. Let's take a look at it. I want you to talk about your property.
Sure. 6816 Lake Mist Lane.
So for context, you got one of these West Side homes, new construction for 182, and we literally just put on this other home that is the property of the week this week is 230, and it's a remodel, right? So it's like a rehab. Do you know like your square footage and your beds and baths?
Sure. Yeah, it's a 2.5 bath. The square footage is about 1350.
Okay. So a little bit smaller, but a new construction home. And so the property's on. Oh, Kelly found it for us.
It's got a 1-car garage.
What?
We just got the recent. It just finished construction, so it looks beautiful.
Our community is awesome because Kelly Barenbaum just put in.
Wow, yeah, that's the picture. Yeah,
she saved me, man. Yeah. So this is it. So like one of these nice little. It looks like those typical JWB new constructions that are these like 2 stories, thin lots. Looks like an estimated on Zillow townhouse for rent of $1,749 per month. That's not too bad on monthly rent, right? Like much higher than the property of the week for a smaller place. Eve, you said that you are and Aaron O'Neill is your neighbor. So is there at 6801 Lake Mist? Yeah. You said that you're educating your kids on this stuff, man. I think that that's a really interesting topic. How are you approaching that side of it? Like, have you read any books on educating your kids on real estate? Are you guys playing that like Robert Kiyosaki game? What are you doing around that?
We just try to take them along with us as much as we can, partly because childcare is such a big problem in this country. So by default, they end up coming with us wherever we go. But, I do feel, at least I hope they're absorbing, some of this knowledge to the point where, I asked them, okay, if you were staying at a home for Disney, what would you want to see? And, so that they're participating, giving their input. And in terms of just, the financial aspect of things, just kind of just helping them think differently. My son the other night was asking about, how are we making money if we have actually, 2 homes? Isn't that spending more money? And, I told him, all right, well, you have this bike sitting in the garage, right? what if you rented it out to someone for their newspaper route while you were in school? You'd be making money even though you paid for the bike. And he was like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And he was like, can I do that? And I was like, I don't know if anybody has a newspaper route nowadays, but so they're starting to get it, and they're participating more and more. So
Are they hearing y'all kind of just like talk about this stuff over the dinner table too? Is it you think a lot of osmosis is working, and then a combination of you asking intelligent questions to them to get them thinking kind of thing? Is that the plan?
Yeah. I mean, we were driving by the other day, and and there's a house that needed probably some TLC. So my daughter was like, Dad, you might want to Google that when you get home.
Let's go.
So even though we're not in the flipping game, they're thinking about it.
They're thinking about it, man. That's interesting. That's a really interesting seed to plant, because we talked about this idea that we're both immigrants that grew up here in the U.S.
Because in my culture, in Haiti, in order to better yourself, you have to go to school and get a job that pays W-2, and then you're safe and secure. You don't want to take too many risks. Whereas, we're fortunate to live in a country where, there's a lot of opportunity, but you might have to take some risk, so trying to instill value in going to school at the same time as building some sort of entrepreneurial spirit, there's a way that we're trying to balance that.
I love it, man. I love it. You also told me that your parents thought you were crazy.
Yeah, we try to call home, once a week or something like that, but we try not to talk about real estate because, they're more like, all right, well, we're the results, so,
yeah,
we'll show them later.
It's funny, man. For me, it was kind of similar, right? Like my old man also, again, we're both born outside the country, but brought here young. My dad being Cuban and an entrepreneur, he never really got into real estate, right? Like he was always in the business game. So he never did it. And as I was getting into it, I was trying to get him like pumped into it. He's like, no, man, it's too late for me in life and whatever. And now we have these conversations. He's actually told me, dude, you did it right. Like he's told me that like the investment that I picked in the time that I picked it, because now his whole portfolio and what he's trying to retire on is in the stock market. And it's like really interesting conversations of where I got some credit from the old man, which is not for an immigrant, right?
Yeah. You gotta take it.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's cool.
I mean, my parents, the other day they were like, you can get another degree. I said, what?
Did you ever like have like side jobs and side hustles when you were like in school, either in high school or college or anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, my wife and I, my wife more than I did because of the field that I went into. But we definitely had jobs in school. And
because I remember my parents in high school, like I always wanted to work, right? Like I was just like at 14, I was like sweeping tennis courts. At like 16, I was working at the smoothie shop.
Yeah.
My parents were always like, why are you working? Like focus on your studies, right? It's very much that mentality to like make you double down in school. Did you experience
the value is in the degrees, and it doesn't always pan out that way.
Yeah. Well, that's cool, man. That's awesome that your kids are getting that like that well-rounded kind of like incentivized entrepreneurship, but you're also value education, right? It's gotta be that's cool, man. Eve, before we wrap up, man, when you're talking to your doctor friends and you're talking to other, like your social circle about investing and stuff like that, and they ask you about getting into real estate, what do you tell them?
I tell them that, it's definitely something that it's not a fad. If, there's the same amount of work that you put into, your profession, you're going to have to put into some learning, but at the same time, you can't learn it all. So what happens is, especially if you're a professional, you have to value somebody else's expertise, which you may have to pay for, or at least, value their time where you can give something else in return. So I've learned that whatever real estate association meeting I go to, I just approach it just from a position of not knowing anything and let them talk, because that's where you're going to get the value. So I think if someone's approaching real estate, you just have to know that there are people out there who know way more than you do, even though you're a professional in your field.
does that land on them? Do physicians like to be the not smartest guy in the room? Is that something that they're used to?
I guess it depends on what field you're talking to. You know?
Is there rivalry between the fields?
Yeah, there are some that are worse than others.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Man. Well, listen, man. I appreciate your time coming on here. This is a very different guest investor because you just got your property, so we don't have like the whole portfolio breakdown.
Yeah,
you had this extraordinary journey. Greg got pulled off into something else.
Yeah.
You've been a great sport, and it's been really great. It's been really great talking to you and getting to know your story. And I can't wait to like keep cheering for you and see you, build this portfolio, educate your kids, and do all that stuff, man. It's been awesome.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so I hope you keep doing this for some time to come.
I hope so too, man. It's a lot of fun. This thing is my favorite thing, right?
Yeah.
Like the community thing, getting to make friends. Like, now that we've seen each other's face and we've talked for a while, now we know each other, right?
Yeah.
Like when we have these live in-persons, the folks that come every week, right? Like we had 40 plus people here.
Yeah.
Thursday, middle of the day, making friends in the chat, adding to the conversation. I just never ever take it for granted. It's a lot of fun, man. So
it's a powerful. I mean, even like within a few days after the bank crash, you guys were on it, and you guys probably gave the better explanation than most of the people out there. So
let's go. We got it's exciting, right? Because I'm glad you said that, because I'm going to tease it for next week, right? We are doing another Not Your Average Insights, but like we had this. Greg and I had this very conscious conversation of, hey, for the first year, it was really like about educating the community. Second year, it was kind of bringing on a bunch of guest investors and letting people know each other. But now we gotta come up with more value. Like I think it's the topical stuff, the explanation of what's going on in the world is what people want to hear. And that's why we've designed every other week to do one of these like Not Your Average Insights, where we can just kind of like show up and talk about what's going on in the world. And this Silicon Valley Bank story provided the first opportunity of us really like ducking and dodging. And it was Friday. We had another story teed up to go, right? Because it was this like Wall Street Journal story that came out a couple of weeks about how like the boomer generation has started like moving with their kids, which I find terrifying. And we're going to talk about that. But we're like, no, man, we got to talk about the Silicon Valley Bank thing. Like, let's dive into it. We were all weekend long going back and forth. Like, are you hearing this? Are you hearing that? And coming up with our takes so we could do it Tuesday.
That was a great episode.
I appreciate that, man. Well, tune in on Tuesday, because we got another one. I think this stuff that the Fed is, we were going to go with, I don't know how much you've heard me talk about like quarterback arm strength so much and compare it to rental properties. And it's now the NFL draft coming up. So we're going to lead with that. But I think with everything that the Fed's going through, like the Fed just raised rates another quarter point. They're in this like really weird position based on the bank run and inflation and what's happening geopolitically internationally. So that's what we're going to talk about on Tuesday. So it's going to be a good one, man.
All right. Looking forward to it.
All right, bud. Well, I just want to thank you again. Thank you to our community, and tune in Tuesday for another Not Your Average Insights. And up until then, if you want to invest in real estate, diversify, have kids that are entrepreneurs and well-educated, and be like Eve, you can't think like an average investor. I'll see you all next time.
All right. Thank you.